Hello there, my friends. Welcome to episode 288 of Stand Up. Joining me today are two people who are unrelated but have the same last name, and it's just a weird coincidence. Hillary Cohen and Michael Cohen. I am Pete Dominick. It's time to stand up with me right now. Hey guys, real excited to introduce you to Hillary Cohen and her work today, preventing food waste on film sets out in California. Introduced to her by longtime listener, supporter, and subscriber Kitty Betham. Kitty, thank you. Had a great conversation with Hillary Cohen. That is coming up. Of course, Michael Cohen also joining me, talking about his new project, Truth and Consequences, his newsletter on Substack, his future podcast, and much more, because he's just announced he's left the Boston Globe. But we had a great conversation about all things impeachment, and happy to have both my guests on. But first of all, I want to apologize for the technical issues that this podcast has had this week. 2 episodes ago, the audio on my mic was wrong because I was messing around with a new microphone setup. And then yesterday, the music played too long into my conversation with Bill B in D.C. I just want you to know, especially those of you that pay for this podcast, I have had a long, soul-searching conversation with my producer / assistant, Schmeat, and we decided to go our separate ways because this was just too many errors that my producer, Schmeat, was making, and I can't deal with that kind of imperfection, and so I unfortunately had to let Schmeat go. But I have brought in a new producer assistant to help me, and his name is Keith, and I'm very excited to have him now to blame, because I needed another fictional yet slightly believable person to blame for all of the mistakes that I actually make myself. So for future issues, please blame Keith. Sounds like Pete. I always thought when people said Keith that they were calling my name. Keith, yes. I didn't say Pete. I said Keith. Oh, sorry. Anyway, sorry for the errors. I'll try to do better. Last night's podcast, yesterday's actually was a nightmare situation because I had 3 guests. It's always a little bit harder. And more importantly, the entire thing just deleted. The Adobe Audition software that I use just crashed, which has never happened. I lost the whole project, and it took me an hour and a half to put the raw materials I had back together, and I didn't get to bed till, I think, 3:30 yesterday, and there were errors, as I found out. And whenever there are errors, I usually go back. I always go back and try to correct them and then repost it, so it'll be better for those of you that listen later in the day or the next day. I think most people probably listen on the day that the podcast drops. It is a daily podcast, and at the beginning here, I establish what happened yesterday. You can count on that every day on the podcast, unless I'm doing something different, something special. But every day, the show opens with the last 24, and then the news dump, and very excited to debut the new news dump jingle sent to me by listener and friend Dan McDonald. It's funny. But let's start with what happened yesterday. I also want to apologize for being a little flip on yesterday's show. And I said to Bill B, who was my guest, I said, I wasn't really watching the impeachment yesterday because I was living my life. I said that. And I cringed hearing myself say it because it's so important to watch what's happening. This is such an important, consequential hearing that is underway right now. Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut said it on MSNBC yesterday.
What's really important right now is not so much Donald Trump. What's really important right now, and that's why as hard as these things are to watch, is that America see how brutal that day was, that America see what the wages are of an oft-repeated lie.
So, yeah, I say get the kids and some snacks and sit in front of the TV and watch history play out with your family. And the truth is, it was actually entertaining. It was riveting. I couldn't pull myself away from it. I went to walk the dog, but I kept it in my earphones, in my AirPods, which, by the way, they were in the breast pocket of my fleece vest. Anyway, I really didn't want to miss a thing. And I really did see most of it. I definitely missed some. But I thought the Democrats did an absolutely superb and very convincing job. They made it clear, compelling, and devastating case using never before seen video showing what happened exactly where, putting up the president's tweets and then illustrating the behavior of the mob. They laid out on a factual basis the events, the TikTok as they happened. And not only on the day, but in the months before, so many impeachable offenses from this president. He started by pressuring state officials. Well, first he denied the outcome of the election. Then he started pressuring state officials. And then he planned the Stop the Steal rally. And then he incited everybody. And then he didn't say stand down when he should have. Democrats made a powerful, personal, and irrefutable case yesterday. And here is Congressman Adam Schiff, who was the first impeachment manager, talking about the case that was laid out and the goal that Democrats had on day two, or in this first part of the trial. Here's Adam Schiff on MSNBC with Chris Hayes last night.
Well, they delivered exactly what they said they would, and that's the sign, I think, of a good case. You tell the jury what you're going to show them, then you show them the evidence, and then at the end in your closing, you tell them what you showed them. Here, they laid out methodically, step by step, how the president of the United States first lied about the upcoming election, wouldn't commit to a peaceful transfer of power, lied while the election was taking place and its aftermath, then systematically tried in every way through the courts, and when that didn't work, through local elected officials, state elected officials, and finally to stop this last step, and that is the certification of the results. And there he pointed this mob right at the Capitol, and he pointed the mob right at Mike Pence. And I think that presentation, showing the video, showing what he was doing and saying and tweeting in real time while you're watching those people maraud through the Capitol, couldn't have been more powerful. Just a compelling presentation to anyone with their eyes open. And I think the managers hope and pray the senators have their eyes open, but they know that the nation is watching.
I thought all of the impeachment managers did a great job. I thought I couldn't single out any one of them. I just was really impressed with those I wasn't as familiar with. But here is Eric Swalwell, who is a more recognizable name. He's pretty prominent during the last 4 years going after Trump. But he's a California congressman. Here he is with, I think, what had to be the most dramatic moment of yesterday when they played audio of the D.C. police, the MPD, being overrun. Swalwell introduces the audio, and then you don't even need to be able to hear what he's saying.
In a separate Metropolitan Police Department radio traffic recording, you can hear an officer when he realizes that the insurrectionists had overtaken the police line.
There's a victim. We lost the line. We lost the line. All MPD, pull back. All MPD, pull back up to the upper deck. All MPD, pull back to the upper deck. I stop. All MPD, come back to the upper deck. Upper deck. There's a victim who's blanked. 1033. I repeat, 1033, west front of the Capitol. We've been blanked and we've lost the line.
We've lost the line, he kept repeating in a panicked voice. I thought that was a really powerful moment. I thought the videos that we hadn't seen were really powerful, and you had to imagine that they chose those videos carefully. But you saw the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, being turned around and running back the other way. You saw Mitt Romney also being turned around by the hero officer Goodman, is his name, right? By the way, which was the most, I'm obsessed with that clip because I'm still like, he didn't stop running. he didn't stop. He recognized Mitt Romney and he didn't stop running. I talk about it later with Michael Cohen. So I don't want to talk about it now, but I thought that was interesting. And then also Mike Pence. You saw that video of Mike Pence walking out too, but you couldn't tell which one was Mike Pence because there was two guys with white heads. Anyway, I thought their usage of video was also compelling and a devastating case because they were showing video from the actual place they were in with some of the most prominent names in all of politics. And you know that if that crazy mob would have gotten a hold of them, they would have probably torn them limb from limb. And here is Mitt Romney wearing a mask. Can't hear it perfectly, but I think you can make it out. Reacting to reporters' questions as to how he felt seeing himself on that video.
obviously very troubling to see the great violence that our Capitol Police and others were subjected to. It tears at your heart and brings tears to your eyes. That was overwhelmingly distressing and emotional.
Did you know you were that close to those folks when you came down this hall?
No, I did not.
Did you know that was Officer Goodman?
Pardon? I'm sorry?
Did you know that was Officer Goodman who...
No, I did not know that was Officer Goodman. I look forward to thanking him when I next see him.
There you go, Mitt Romney yesterday. Also, Jamie Raskin, I thought was great. Again, really like Jamie Raskin. He's been on this podcast, by the way, I should mention. It's a big deal. Episode 88 with Dan Savage. Oh, that was a good one. Dan Savage and Jamie Raskin, episode 88. We were talking about his plan to reopen America responsibly back in April of 2020. Anyway, Jamie Raskin laying out the argument on free speech, and I just thought this was one of the most brilliant moments and really great way of explaining it. Here he is.
Worse than someone who falsely shouts fire in a crowded theater. It's more like a case where the town fire chief, who's paid to put out fires, sends a mob not to yell fire in a crowded theater, but to actually set the theater on fire. And who then, when the fire alarms go off and the calls start flooding into the fire department, asking for help, does nothing but sit back, encourage the mob to continue its rampage, and watch the fire spread on TV with glee and delight. So then we say this fire chief should never be allowed to hold this public job again, and you're fired and you're permanently disqualified. And he objects. And he says, we're violating his free speech rights just because he's pro-mob or pro-fire or whatever it might be. Come on. I mean, you really don't need to go to law school to figure out what's wrong with that argument. Here's the key. Undoubtedly, a private person can run around on the street expressing his or her support for the enemies of the United States and advocating the overthrow of the United States government. You've got a right to do that under the First Amendment. But if the president spent all of his days doing that, uttering the exact same words, expressing support for the enemies of the United States and for overthrowing the government, is there anyone here who doubts that this would be a violation of his oath of office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and that he or she could be impeached for doing that?
You've heard a lot of great arguments about against the stupid defense of using the First Amendment as the argument for Trump's legality and ability to make that. But I thought Jamie Raskin did a great job right there examining it. He then shared one more terribly tragic, sad, upsetting story about a Capitol Police officer through his eyes. And this is very powerful and proves a lot of the protesters obviously were not motivated by economic anxiety.
I'll tell you a final sad story in this kaleidoscope of sadness and terror and violence. One of our Capitol officers who defended us that day was a longtime veteran of our force, a brave and honorable public servant who spent several hours battling the mob as part of one of those blue lines defending the Capitol in our democracy. For several hours straight, as the marauders punched and kicked and mauled and spit upon and hit officers with baseball bats and fire extinguishers, cursed the cops, and stormed our Capitol, he defended us, and he lived every minute of his oath of office. And afterwards, overwhelmed by emotion, he broke down in the rotunda. And he cried for 15 minutes. And he shouted out, "I got called an N-word 15 times today." And then he recorded, "I sat down with one of my buddies, another black guy, and tears just started streaming down my face. And I said, 'What the F, man? Is this America?'" That's the question before all of you in this trial. Is this America? Can our country and our democracy ever be the same if we don't hold accountable the person responsible for inciting the violent attack against our country, our capital, and our democracy, and all of those who serve us so faithfully and honorably? Is this America?
Hell yes, it's America, Congressman. Hell yes. Let's be honest about it so that we can try to make it better. But yeah, there's a lot of racists in America, hardcore concerned people about losing their white supremacy and male supremacy as well. I was absolutely blown away, very impressed by the performance, the delivery, and the actual commentary from Congressman Joe Negusha. Is that how you say his name? From Colorado, who in this clip presents the evidence that the MAGA mob intended to kill the vice president, Mike Pence, and Nancy Pelosi if they had the opportunity.
5 people lost their lives on that terrible, tragic day. A woman was shot dead 50 feet from where we later certified the election results. And for those who question just how bad it was, criminal complaints recently unsealed by the Department of Justice are more than revealing. You'll see one of these documents on the screen. In the charging affidavit of one of the leaders of the Proud Boys, we learned that members of this group said, I'm going to quote, they would have killed Mike Pence if given the chance. In another, we learned of a tweet in real time while they were in the building stating, we broke into the Capitol. We got inside. We did our part. We were looking for Nancy Pelosi to shoot her in the frickin' brain, but we didn't find her. And for anyone who suggests otherwise, these defendants themselves have told you exactly why they were here. You'll see this in the trial. That in the halls of the Capitol, on social media, in news interviews, and in charging documents, they confirm they were following the president's orders.
Yeah, that guy, Negusha, Joe Negusha, congressman from Colorado, a first-generation American, I think. He's immigrant family from Eritrea, I believe. I may have all that wrong. Anyway, he was very impressive yesterday. I was really blown away by his performance. Also, of course, a lot of people talking about the delivery, the performance, and the content of the Congresswoman representing the Virgin Islands, who I don't think most people, including myself, was familiar with until yesterday. Congresswoman Stacy Plaskett is her name, at Stacy Plaskett of the Virgin Islands. She grew up apparently in Brooklyn, she said. Anyway, she was just stunning. Her appearance, her strength, her delivery, her conviction, her speech. And while Congresswoman, or rather delegate, I should say, Stacy Plaskett can't actually cast a vote to impeach Donald Trump as a member of Congress because she represents the Virgin Islands, which is a U.S. territory. But as a House impeachment manager, she is able to make the case against him in his Senate trial, and so she did.
The truth is usually seen and rarely heard. Truth is truth, whether denied or not. And the truth is, President Trump had spent months calling his supporters to a march on a specific day, at a specific time, in specific places to stop the certification. And leading up to the event, there were hundreds of posts online showing that his supporters took this as a call to arms to attack the Capitol. There were detailed posts of plans to attack online. Law enforcement warned that these posts were real threats and even made arrests days leading up to the attack. And yet, in the face of all this, these credible warnings of serious, dangerous threats to our Capitol, when those thousands of people were standing in front of President Trump, ready to take orders and attack, this is what he said. We're going to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. And that's why this is different. And that's why he must be convicted and disqualified.
Millions of people learning the name Stacy Plaskett, impeachment manager. And now let's get some reaction from just a couple of Republicans. First, here is Alaska Senator and jurist, they're jurists as well, Lisa Murkowski, with a mask on, so you can't hear it that well.
I think that the House managers are making a very strong case for a timeline that laid out very clearly with the words that were used, when he used them, how he used them, to really build the anger, the violence that we saw here in this Capitol. The evidence that has been presented thus far is pretty damning. I don't see how Donald Trump could be reelected to the presidency again.
Wait a second. What does his reelection have to do with it? I feel like at the end there, she was gonna say, I don't see how I could not vote to impeach him for inciting an insurrection at this point. But then what she actually said was, listen, if impeachment is just so that he can't get reelected, I don't need to vote against him because he's not going to be reelected. Like, she's taking a political calculus. I mean, it's like Susan Collins saying after his first impeachment, I think he learned his lesson. No, it's preposterous. Here is Senator John Thune, who is the second ranking senator in the Republican Senate. Now the minority, I think he's South Dakota. All I know is that he's got a strong jaw. He's a handsome man, and he's not, in my opinion, a good man, but here is his take.
I've said all along I was going to listen to the arguments and look at the evidence, and I'm doing that. And like I said, these guys I think they were very effective. And we'll see what kind of arguments the defense puts up. But yeah, I'm gonna listen and draw conclusions when it's all done.
All right, there is Senator John Thune. And now let me just get to just two clips from commentators who I respect a lot. Of course, CNN's Laura Coates first. Here's Laura.
Well, the goal was for him to feel the admiration of the people who followed his instructions. And sometimes that is the point. But I have to say, it's a point you made, Gloria, as well. I think so oftentimes now we all attribute January 6th as the new date that will live in infamy as the insurrection date. But it wasn't coincidental to their theme of the case as to why January 6th was so important. It was the day that they thought they were going, to your point, to stop the steal, to stop this ceremonial function that Pence was presiding over while they were building a gallows and a noose on the lawn outside. And so it's important for the theme for them to make sure it's very clear that the reason that his comments up to January 6th, the big lie, is all about why they were marching towards that day in infamy. They wanted to interfere with what the congressional role was supposed to be. And if you consistently put it into that light and that perspective, their case becomes even stronger to show he wasn't just trying to stay in power. The article of impeachment talks about imperiling a co-equal branch of government who was performing their constitutional duties then. And so you have to keep in mind that it wasn't just the insurrection on January 6th. It was a day that has been set out for so many generations that that's the day where we acknowledge the certification of our electoral college system. And that was the disruption.
God damn, is she articulate as hell. Man, is she smart. Love Laura Coates. Got to get her back right here on Stand Up. But man, she's busy. 3 hours in Sirius and now every day Sirius XM. And now, of course, it's CNN all the time. And great commentary from her. And now just one more. Norm Eisen, who I think is also very effective and super smart, credible guy. He's an attorney who was also the counsel for the Democrats in the House Judiciary Committee during the impeachment process of President Trump earlier in 2020, last year.
And Trump wanted to exert maximum pressure on those senators who might side with him, the congressmen who might side with him, and above all, and we heard this in his speech on the 6th, we've heard the references to Pence. We will hear a lot of this again in response to Ross's question, pressure on Mike Pence. Pence could have done the wrong thing. He could have broken either way. If he were as unlawful as Trump's most extreme enablers, a Cruz, a Hawley in the Senate, a Mo Brooks, or a Jim Jordan in the House, he could have said, no, I have the power to throw this over. So Trump applied the squeeze like every extortionist. It's really the same story as the Ukraine impeachment. Extortion. Like every extortionist who says, gee, it would be a shame if your beautiful shop caught fire. Trump said, gee, it would be a shame if our beautiful democracy caught fire. And then he had to follow through on the threat.
Oh, Norm Eisen nailing it. I got to get him on the show, too. All right. So does any of this make any difference to Republican jurist senators who would have to vote to convict Donald Trump? Well, here is Mike Lee, who made an ass of himself at the hearings last night when he complained about a thing, saying the thing didn't happen, but it did happen. And Mike Lee's own spokesman confirmed that the thing happened. But don't let that distract you from this. I saw this tweet from, I don't know, this guy is Brian Tashman, who wrote, one thing that's so laughable about Senate Republicans insisting that, yeah, Trump did a bad thing, but he learned his lesson and, hey, everyone's guilty of something, is that Trump himself has said that he acted absolutely perfectly and January 6th was a great day. Nonetheless, here is a quick clip that's gone viral from Senator Mike Lee of Utah.
Mistakes, everyone's entitled to a mulligan once in a while.
Everyone's entitled to a mulligan once in a while. And now all of Twitter is calling Mike Lee Mulligan Mike Lee. A mulligan, of course, by the way, is a cute term used to tactfully describe cheaters at golf. Of course, Donald Trump is a cheater at golf, but it's not usually used to describe something in this case, you know, inciting an insurrection. A friend comedian Chris Titus, tweeting at Titus Nation, says, premeditated insurrection resulting in the murder of a police officer. Yeah, sure, let's give him a mulligan. Clinton lied about a blowjob. Gotta get him on, too. Titus. Yes. Getting good guest ideas as I'm talking to you in my shed. All right, well, that is my recapping of yesterday's impeachment. I'll talk more about it with Michael Cohen, and also Hillary Cohen is going to join me to talk about this great nonprofit that she and others have started to help feed people in California using all of this gourmet wasted food from movie and TV sets. That's coming up. But first,
are you sick of COVID, politics, and Trump? Sit back, because here comes today's news dump.
Thank you, Dan McDonald. Let's start with the boss, Bruce Springsteen. Normally wouldn't do a story like this in the news dump, but it's the boss. And apparently the boss was driving drunk. He was arrested in a national park in New Jersey back in November for driving under the influence. According to a spokeswoman for the Gateway National Recreation Area in Sandy Hook, New Jersey, he was charged with DWI, reckless driving, and consuming alcohol in a closed area. Apparently, he was cooperative throughout the process. Of course, Springsteen debuted an ad for Jeep that was supposed to bring everybody together, but divided everybody on the Super Bowl. And now when you think about it, the DWI charge explains the whole thing. He was drunk when he was doing that ad. That's why it was so bad. It's the only way to excuse it. And I just think that Bruce Springsteen is having a hell of a week. Probably doesn't care at all, right? All right. Here is a made for Fox News and every conservative outlet in the country story to distract from impeachment. And Fox News did just that. They weren't playing the impeachment like every other network, and they were talking about this story. The Dallas Mavericks, who are now going to stop playing the national anthem before games after consulting with the NBA's Commissioner Adam Silver. The Dallas Mavericks did not announce the change in policy, but the national anthem had not been played before any of the 13 preseason and regular season games at the American Airlines Center where they play in Dallas. Cuban told ESPN that in listening to the community, there were quite a few people who voiced their concerns. Really, their fear is that the national anthem did not fully represent them, that their voices were not being heard. So we've had a lot of conversations about whether or not we should play the anthem. And so during the preseason game, we decided to not play it and just see what the response was, knowing that we were going to have an ongoing conversation about it. We didn't make any decision to never play the national anthem. Then that wasn't the case at all. We didn't cancel the national anthem. We still had our flag flying proud up on the wall in the American Airlines Center, and everybody had the opportunity to address it and pray to it or salute it or do whatever their feelings are. All right, so what do you think about that one? I guess that's going to be problematic for the time being. and quite a distraction as well. I love it. I could care less about the national anthem. Patriotism really just has never done, not never, but in the last, 10 years, 15 years as I've matured and watched the world, it's not my thing. That's for sure. All right. Neither is the Pledge of Allegiance. I find it all bizarre, but we could talk about it. We should talk about it. If anybody disagrees, call me and I'll record our conversation, and it would be interesting. All right. News Dump continues with the death of Larry Flint. The Hustler publisher died at the age of 78. Champion of First Amendment rights died Wednesday, according to the Associated Press. He was 78 years old. He's been in frail health and died of heart failure at his Hollywood Hills home, according to his nephew. I love that movie, The People versus Larry Flint. I haven't seen that in a long time. I wonder if that holds up. Anyway, say what you will about Larry Flint. I interviewed him back at Sirius. He was a gentleman. Didn't make me feel unsafe. Oh, but wait, what's this? Before you memorialize Larry Flint as a hero, please remember his daughter, Tanya Flint Vega, said he was a child molester and a monster. Okay, noted. Thank you, Jake Tapper. That's where I saw that. He tweeted it. Thousands of fans gathered to cheer on the Super Bowl champions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, on Wednesday with a boat parade amid continued concern over the coronavirus pandemic. Parade got started about 1 p.m. on the Hillsborough River near downtown Tampa. Thousands of fans decked out in Buccaneers gear lined the river on a sunsplash day to cheer on the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, that must be why Mark Lawler, who is a longtime listener, subscriber, supporter of the show, texted me to ask me how I felt about boat parades. It felt like it was out of the blue. I didn't know that was happening, Mark. And, I'm not a parade person, really, myself. I hope they had a great time, though. It definitely looks like Tom Brady did. The star quarterback was absolutely shit-faced, was stumbling. He's like being carried off of his boat. And he also, I'm not even making this up. Go watch this video. He threw the Super Bowl trophy, the Lombardi trophy. He threw it from his boat to another boat, like 15 feet. And the other people on the other boat caught it. But what if it fell into the bay or wherever the hell he was? I just assume he was Tampa Bay. I mean, it was bizarre behavior from Tom Brady, but whatever, who cares? Congress, COVID, climate change, come on, who really cares? The world's second oldest person has now survived 2 global pandemics before her 117th birthday. How about this story? Sister Andre, a retired French nun with the given name Lucille Randon, was on Tuesday declared recovered from the coronavirus, which infected 81 of 88 residents of her retirement home. Diagnosed on January 16th, the oldest living European who spent almost 3 decades caring for elderly people and orphan children was very lucky. She was forced to isolate in a room for weeks, spending most of the time praying. She didn't experience any coronavirus symptoms. Her first 117th birthday celebration come a century after she's survived the 1918 flu epidemic. Wow, that's an awesome story. 117. Every breath is a gift. I guess that's true of any age, isn't it? The U.S. Coast Guard rescued 3 Cuban nationals from a deserted Bahaman island where they'd been living off coconuts for 33 days, according to the Coast Guard. Lieutenant Justin Dory told CNN, "It was incredible. I just don't know how they did it. I was amazed that they were in as good a shape as they were." While doing routine patrols on Monday, U.S. Coast Guard air crews saw the 2 men and a woman waving makeshift flags on Anguilla Cay, located in a chain of islands between the lower Florida Keys and Cuba. The Coast Guard dropped down a radio, food, and water to the trio on Monday and rescued them off the island on Tuesday. So I guess they got one more night on the island. Like, we'll come back and get you tomorrow, so live it up tonight. Orgy! I hate to be that woman. The Cubans' boat capsized in rough waters about 5 weeks ago, the trio told the Coast Guard, and they swam to the island. Another good story. They had no serious injuries, and I think they made it to America. Cool. All right, well, that is your news dump, and man, it was a good one. That whole first 34 minutes of the show or whatever was award-winning, I think. Really. I mean, it's been like 5 or 6 hours, I think, like pulling this audio and putting together the narrative. And I mean, obviously, it was a big day. It was Impeachment Day, so it's not always like that. And I did have the help of Keith, my new producer. He was super helpful the whole day. Thanks, Keith. I'm sure the show's going to be perfect because you're really so helpful. Getting the news stories, there's a lot of work. If you aren't a paid subscriber, please sign up now with at least like a $5 or $10 a month subscription. That'd be awesome. If you listen to the podcast a lot, then please consider a subscription. Go to patreon.com/Pete Dominick or the paid subscription link in the show notes. And now it's time to get to my first guest, who is my old friend Michael Cohen, who is a columnist at the Boston Globe for years. He was a speech writer at the State Department before that. And now he's going it alone like me and so many other people leaving corporate media to start his own newsletter and subsequently, I think, a podcast. And we'll see what happens. I've been talking about it with him for a while, but he's just made it public that he has left the Boston Globe. The new place he is, truthandcons.substack.com. Truth and Consequences by Michael Cohen, who is an author and just a great writer and commentator. We had a great conversation, had some laughs, and always like getting his insights on things. Here's my conversation with @SpeechBoy71 on Twitter. It's the real Michael Cohen. No, not that one. So you have watched both days' trials? Both days of the trial?
I have watched both.
I, yesterday on the show, said, well, I didn't watch it because I had to live my life. And I felt like a dick after saying that. And I saw your tweet today, and it's like, you know what? Every American should watch this. I should have the kids watching this. And whether or not you watch it right live, watch all of it. But you should really tune into it and pay as much attention to it as you can. Why?
I mean, listen, I actually had my kids watch it with me tonight. We watched it together. We don't usually watch TV at night, but we watched it together, and I thought it was important to see because, you know, here's the thing. Trump's not going to get convicted, right? Republicans are cowards, and they're craven, and they're cynical. They're not going to acquit him. But this is a public record of what happened, and it's incredibly important that it is out there. And nobody can say that they weren't told. Nobody, they don't know what happened. And so the Republicans who like to, put their head in the sand and act like they're not aware of things Trump has done, they can't sit here and say they don't know what he did, or they don't know what happened. They're just choosing to ignore it, or choosing to let it go, or choosing to just not hold him accountable for it. But I thought today, from the whole day was pretty riveting, but from about 5 o'clock on, when they got to, sort of going through the riot, it was just riveting. I mean, it was extraordinary television, and I was wrapped. It was just an incredible thing to watch, and incredibly depressing and incredibly emotional, frankly.
Democrats get a lot of criticism. You've been someone who's criticized Democrats' policy agendas, techniques, messaging. I thought they were so impressive in these first 2 days, and their use of media and video and creating the narrative. It must have been so hard. I mean, I really understand how difficult a lot of that technical stuff can be, but it was like a TV show, like we were watching a documentary. They threw the tape. The tape was ready. There were minor technical issues, but nobody cares about that shit anymore. I just thought, Michael, they did a remarkably good job technically, stylistically, and of course with their argument. I really give them a lot of credit. What great choices they had of people to present.
I totally agree with that. And I thought the people who presented were great. I think obviously the staff that put together these videos, together probably much of the speeches, deserve enormous credit as well. I just thought, there was a professionalism there that, like, it's funny. I tweeted out at some point that it had the emotional resonance of a feature film. What I mean by that is that films, often are produced in such a way to elicit an emotional reaction, elicit emotional response. And this presentation from all of them had the same effect. I mean, it really did. And it was just visually presented in a very compelling way. And, and it was such a powerful argument that God help the people who basically look at this and say, well, it's no big deal and we should just acquit him. I mean, it's just awful that that's what's going to happen. But, it was a very impressive accomplishment. And I thought Democrats did a really impressive job today. And I think, let me say one more thing too. Give them credit for pursuing this, right? They know Republicans aren't going to convict him. They knew this on Ukraine too, but they're doing what is the right thing to do. They're trying to hold a president accountable. And I think, the Republicans are unwilling to stand up to Trump. That's awful, but that's their decision. But Democrats have a decision also. Are we going to look away from this, or are we going to say, this is what happened, and we need to account for it. We need to, make sure the person held responsible, is exposed for what they did. And I give them a lot of credit for A, impeaching him, and B, for taking this so seriously, because they clearly are.
I don't give them as much credit because I think that Republicans have had show trials for things like the Fast and Furious and Benghazi, for things that didn't even happen. And they made huge scenarios, shows about them for things that didn't even happen. If the Democrats didn't do this, I'm impressed with the way they're doing it, how effectively they are. But if they hadn't gone through with this, I think it would have been a huge mistake. And
of course, I agree with that.
But
yes,
the fact that they have is so important. And Michael, the fact that the president, this is impeachment number 2, and it's so much different for so many reasons than impeachment number 1. But I think the obvious one is we all watched this happen on our televisions on January 6th. And now we're watching them take account for it all. But the other thing I think that's super important is that Donald Trump can't tweet. How about that? We're not distracted. We stay focused. We're not waiting for his reaction. And I think that's so important and makes a big difference here. And I don't know if it's the best point, but I think it's an important point as to what makes this impeachment different than the last one, that he's muzzled.
Well, I think, but you know what? It's funny. I was thinking about this. It's interesting you said that, because I thought one thing I was struck by today is that it seemed like every single one of the House managers at some point or another became emotional. Choked up.
Mm-hmm.
I know Swalwell did it today. There was someone else, and I can't off the top of my head remember who it was. It might have been Kasho. I can't remember. But it was very emotional.
Congresswoman Dean got a little.
That's right. That's what it was. It was Dean, yes. Who, by the way, they were all excellent. I mean, they really were. I thought, oh gosh, I'm now blanking on her name. The woman from Virgin Islands.
Plaskett.
Yes. She was exceptional. I mean, she knows how to present a case in a court of law. They were all great, but she was really phenomenal.
Plaskett, Congresswoman Stacy Plaskett. I just said Plaskett. But the thing is, and I just tweeted introducing as a quote to one of her tweets, because she is not a well-known congressperson.
No,
plus, she's from the Virgin Islands, and obviously they don't have as much of a voice and influence. And any of those people who are not as well known, they must have been told by somebody at some point, there's going to be Congresswoman Plaskett before her appearance as an impeachment manager on the world stage, and after. And now it's after. Everybody knows who this woman is now. So anyway, I'm not sure what you were saying. I just want to make that point. We were introduced to a bunch of people who we didn't know are now players.
Right. No, and I think, again, all of them just really were impressive. But the point I was going to make about how emotional they all got, and I think what's interesting about it, I mean, they got emotional because they were all there. Right. This is not just some esoteric, debate about abuse of power. This is literally something that they experienced firsthand. They've known some of these officers who were hurt. And I think from that perspective, it just had a different emotional resonance because of that. And because of the nature of the videos. I mean, look, we live in a culture, obviously, that we respond, to these videos and to photographs and so forth. And all of those videos, I mean, the video today, there was one of I never seen before, that hadn't been shown before.
That's some of the surveillance video. I mean, every single idiot in there had their camera, and media and authorities got their hands on them. But the security footage was, something only accessible to Democrats. But what was the video you were talking about?
So there was one video with Officer Goodman, the officer who stood up in front of that time. He basically, redirected Mitt Romney away from the mob.
It was real funny to me because it was real funny to me, Michael. Sorry, he didn't stop running when he saw a U.S. senator. He didn't stop. And I noticed that he was basically like, wrong way, Mitt. Wrong way, Senator.
Turn around.
And Black Twitter was all making the same joke. Like, if you see a black person run, you don't ask why. And Mitt Romney's like the whitest guy, so he had no idea. He had to figure out, what's happening? Well, where are you going?
I think
officer, why are you running?
There was another officer there who also was like, let's get the F out of here. And it was, but look, here's the thing. What if they had caught him? What would they have done to him?
I'll get your hands off me.
I don't want to think about it. Mitt Romney is not a popular person among Trump fans, right? Because he voted for a conviction on the first
Michael, we have seen throughout history the psychological behavior of an actual mob when they find a recognizable target.
Yes.
You don't need a PhD in it. You can just look up, Google, pipe and Gaddafi. I mean, it's horrible what gets done because there's a rage. And there's this, I mean, Mitt Romney, Mike Pence, Nancy Pelosi, one of these, women, female congressmen, any kind of sexual assault that could have been absolute nightmare. And we've been hearing everybody say what almost happened, what could have happened, which is why it's so important that we're recounting that day on this stage the way that they are as well as they are. And you make a great point about that they focused on Pence. Why is that important?
I thought that was really interesting. I mean, they basically, they were treating Pence like an heroic figure, and I'm always reminded of that great Chris Rock bit about, that's what you're supposed to do. I mean, the guy doesn't get lots of points from what he's supposed to do, although granted, he had a lot of pressure on him from Trump, but they kept making him out to be the guy who stood up. He's a patriot, did the right thing, and so on and so forth. And, the implication was clear, to put this as a dividing line between him and Trump. Here's Trump, here's Pence. And say to the senators, which side do you want to be on? Want to be on the guy who had to escape, whose life was in danger, or the guy who threatened him? Now, of course, they're going to go with the guy who threatened them because they could threaten them. So, they're going to side with him because they're a bunch of cowards. But I just think it was interesting it just put a little more pressure on them by basically saying, look, Pence was put in danger. They could have killed Pence. If they wanted to kill Pence, they were trying to find him. He's one of you. He's a Republican, right? Been a Republican longer than Donald Trump has. You're going to sell this guy out? It was very smart approach to take. I mean, not that I expect it to affect how the GOP votes, how the Senate members vote, but it was, I thought, an effective way to try to get at them, or at least make it more difficult for them.
Yeah, I thought that was, it'll be interesting to see how they react to that. Apparently Mike Pence and Donald Trump don't talk anymore, Michael.
I mean, first of all, who gives a shit, really? Like, honestly, I mean, can you imagine that the conversations they had before were some kind of Algonquin roundtable? I mean, come on, seriously.
And I would give anything to hear what Mike Pence and Donald Trump talked about. I
don't think you do. I don't think.
Oh,
you
yeah,
really
I do.
That,
I want to hear. I think Donald Trump, from a comedian's point of view, I think Donald Trump is funny because he's so cruel and mean. And I think that he would sit there with Mike Pence at having lunch going, you really buy into all that religious stuff, huh? Like really giving him a hard time about his religious beliefs. I absolutely believe that's what happened because he's so uncomfortable with Pence's and anybody else's wacky religious beliefs, and he's not going to hide it in private.
So pious, right? I mean, I think it would be uncomfortable for him. You're right. That's probably true. But I will say, look, at the end of the day, I mean, it's kind of amazing to think about the fact that he really did sick this crowd on Pence. It's really kind of a remarkable thing to think about, and that he sicked them on all of them, every member of Congress, and also the thing a lot of things really resonated with me, but the one that I couldn't get past was the last presentation. I think it was David Cicilline from Rhode Island talking about all of the opportunities that Trump had to do something to stop violence, and then he didn't do it. And all the people in the White House who said he was enjoying it, that he was surprised everyone was upset by it. I mean, the man is a sociopath. He really is. And I thought that was something that's also incredibly powerful. If you're a Republican, I mean, for someone to not care, to literally not care that people's lives are at risk, that the man who served you for 4 years, his life is at risk, that, that's the guy you're going to vote to bail out? That guy? I mean, it really does put some pressure on them. And I mean, not that it's going to matter, but it's just, I mean, can you imagine looking at that presentation and saying,
No, I can't. But I can't imagine going along with tying my reputation, my future to Donald Trump. To Donald Trump. I can't imagine that. Why Mike Pence? Why Jeff Sessions? Chris Christie? Any of them would ever? Because it's so obvious what happens to you. John Kelly. They played that John Kelly audio today about whether he thought he knew what he was doing. Yeah. And, I mean, there's so many mafia tactics that Trump uses too, the way that he orders people to do things, but doesn't directly do it. But obviously that's what he was doing. And there was so much of that at play today. What do you make, finally, Michael, of is whataboutism? Is that a new term to describe an old argument technique that used to be called something different, like dodging the question or whatever? Because what you're hearing from Senator Roy Blunt, and from obviously a lot of other people.
Yeah,
I don't know who Mike Blunt is, but it's probably a rapper. But Roy Blunt is saying, listen, what about all last summer? You heard Democrats talking about fighting and getting your faces. And so that's the only defense so far. That's the main defense that we've heard from Trump's defenders, that what Trump did was no different than what Democrats do. Is whataboutism a new thing? And what about that whataboutism?
Did it used to be called two wrongs make a right? Maybe that was
I was going to react similar. That's my answer. It's what kids do. He did it first.
Exactly.
I thought that's what a thing, but I don't know enough about politics and political history to know if that was an argument that was, it seems like you're talking about anyway.
No, look, but I think, well, it's interesting because, I don't know what it was called before. It's a good question, actually. But whataboutism is definitely a more contemporary expression, and it's a perfect expression. I love that expression, actually, because it really captures just the emptiness of this kind of argument. I mean, for Roy Blunt, first of all, to say, well, they burned down cities. First of all, they didn't burn down cities. I mean, it is so tiresome to keep hearing this talking point. They didn't burn any cities down. Would you stop saying that? It's not true. We go, oh, no, it's not true.
No, it was like a couple stores and a couple blocks and a couple cities. It wasn't.
No cities were burned to the ground. Okay, this wasn't like Detroit '67. Okay, stop. Enough already. But the other thing is, so what? If you thought that was bad, then why isn't this bad? Like, why does that make this not bad? Because Democrats did the same thing. I mean, it's just a completely intellectually bankrupt argument. Either something is bad or it's not bad. And it's not like something is not bad because someone else did the same thing.
Well, nobody promoted
the way logic works.
Nobody promoted a terrorist attack like it was a Springsteen concert. I mean, this was the Democrats. I'm so glad they did this. They laid out how this event had been promoted for weeks by the president and
really
his.
Powerful.
How important was that? We've not seen any Democrat or anybody else do anything remotely like that.
I thought that was. I mean,
people flew in from all over the country. People paid for buses.
Stop the steal. I thought that there was one point also where they showed people literally reading Trump's tweets aloud on megaphones outside the Capitol. But the thing is that the stop the steal, which you heard over and over again, that's been going on since the fall. I mean, well, not that exact line, but the notion that they would just steal the election. He's been saying this since May. I mean, before that. And by the way, the one thing about this is that it's like if you go back to the first impeachment, that was about trying to subvert the election by pressuring Ukraine. This trying to subvert the election in a different way. It's all part of the same effort by Trump to win the election. And this isn't just something that came out out of nowhere. He's been doing this for a year now.
Yeah,
and the idea that somehow this just happened organically, you have to be a moron to believe that, or just so incredibly cynical that you're going to deny the reality it's staring you in the face, which is what Republicans are going to do.
Congressman DeGoose did an amazing job of laying out, basically having empathy for the rioters, the insurrectionists, basically saying they thought the election was stolen. That's what they were told.
I totally agree with that, by the way. These people were lied to, and they were,
So it's not about did he, it's almost to me less about him on the day of the insurrection at the rally saying fight and combat and you can't give up, and more about him telling people, giving them an impetus, a motivation for why they would go all the way to Washington, D.C. and leave their families behind and die for their country. In some cases, we heard that because they stole your vote. I would do that. I would sign up for that myself.
Exactly. And that's, by the way, the thing about that. It's a great point. They didn't just show up in Washington by chance. They were invited to Washington by Trump, a rally that he hosted. Right. And why? Because he told them for months, every day on social media, in press conferences, what have you, that the election had been stolen. He told them this over and over and over again. And it wasn't true. Obviously, it wasn't true. But he told them, and then brings them to the mall, tells them to go to the Capitol, lights the kindling on fire, and walks away. Like, I didn't know. I had the fire start. I get no idea. I was going back to the White House. I mean, what kind of argument is this? I mean, to not recognize the obvious role that he played here, the obvious, like it's not right. There's nothing where Trump says, go to the Capitol and break windows to get in. Okay. But, use some deductive reasoning here. Use some critical thinking. Obviously, those people were acting on behalf of Trump because he had told them for months that the election had been stolen, that their country was stolen. It's
a weird thing. I've been to a lot of protests. I participated in them for climate, for women's, for BLM. I've been there. I've felt the passion and the anger. Why are you in the streets? You're in the streets for equality, for justice, for these reasons, these things that are happening. And these people were so angry, and they were in the streets for a thing that did not happen.
It did not happen. It did not happen. But they were told it happened. They were told by their over and over that it happened.
Yeah.
And by the way, let's just be clear. It wasn't just Trump. It was the Josh Hawleys and the Ted Cruz's of the world who refused to acknowledge
they could have never, ever done it without him. If he had said, I lost, I concede, Hawley and Cruz, nobody else would have done anything. It was all him.
That's true.
They jumped on the wagon. And by the way, Sidney Powell and these other lawyers, they're just grifters. They just marked him. He'll pay us. We'll just tell him what he wants to hear and bill him. Giuliani, come on. There was no evidence. They had no evidence for any of the crimes.
Although I actually kind of think that Sidney Powell might be legitimately crazy. I think she might.
Yeah, you may be right.
Crazy.
You may be right.
But in general, I mean, look, you're right. I mean, the fault is broad. A lot of people you can held responsible for this, but fundamentally it rests with Trump. And if you can't hold him responsible,
but I mean, Al Gore and John Kerry there were people, serious people, that were saying, "Listen, don't give up," and we're not going to give up. And John Kerry and Al Gore were like, "Okay, thank you, but I already conceded. It's over. You can stand down." I mean, there was nothing like this. All right. So before I let you go, I do want to make sure we promote your new project. You've left the corporate media behemoth of the Boston Globe, and you jumped in the deep end with us independent folks. But you're someone who comes with a lot more credibility and experience. So I'm excited for you. I'm very excited for you, and I want everybody to subscribe. So what's going on? It's public.
So my last day at the Boston Globe is on Friday. He's actually working on my final column today, which was a bit emotionally wrenching, to be honest.
I'm sure
it was a lot to do, but. My last day is on Friday, and then I started a newsletter called Truth and Consequences. It is truthandcons.substack.com. And it is basically sort of a continuation of what I've been doing for the Globe with a lot of columns, weekly newsletters, stuff on music and movies and sports, but mostly politics. And it's just sort of my opinion. And I brought in a bunch of smart people to write pieces for me as well. There's a podcast, there's video Zoom chats, the whole 9 yards. It's a multimedia operation, and it's just sort of what's going on in American politics today. I ask everyone, hope everyone can subscribe and just check it out. See if you like it. And if you like it, hopefully you'll want to subscribe and, keep me in a journalism job for a little while longer.
We need you in that job. You're a great voice, and I'm so glad that you're doing this. Everybody also on Twitter, you can find all that information too at SpeechBoy71, and of course a link to truthandcons.substack.com in the show notes. I'm really excited about it and promoting it and helping in any way I possibly can. You've been very generous with your time. With me over the years, and I'm excited to promote your work and that you're doing this. And the best of luck, buddy. I hope everybody listening that's been supporting me will also support Michael Cohen.
Well, I really appreciate that, Pete. It means a lot to me you said that, so I do really appreciate it.
And and based on what you said, you will be talking about culture and music and everything. Just real quick, your hot take on the Springsteen ad?
Oh, I hated it. It's so awful.
Why?
Because
too Christian for you?
No, I don't have a problem with that. It's just that it's like that. First of all, this whole idea like there's this middle and we all agree on stuff. We don't, first of all, and there is not some mythical middle that we're all gonna come together and sing Kumbaya. But I also hate the way that it presents America. America is in Kansas. No, America's in Brooklyn. America's in East LA. America's in Detroit. America's in Chicago. I hate the way that we promote this notion in this society that like America is about, what happens in rural and small town America where people have pickup trucks and they go to church every Sunday. No, that's not America. That is America, but there's another America out there, like the place where I live, where I live, 1 out of every 100 Americans lives. And so I just feel like it just makes me a little crazy when I see stuff like that. And I think Bruce Springsteen knows better than that. He definitely knows better than that. So I just wish that I don't know. It just found disappointing. I thought it was the wrong message. And I thought it was also like a false message and one that, I don't know, just doesn't resonate with me at all. And it's not the way and I just think Bruce Springsteen's going to do an ad, his first ad ever.
Should be for Ritz crackers.
Yeah, something worthwhile. Maybe not Ritz crackers.
It should be for junk food, I think.
Not
completely cheap. Sell out. Like either fully sell out.
Or like, yeah, right. Like, come on, make it count. I just for Jeep, really?
Yeah, exactly. That's great. I like that rant. I like that response. I'm glad I asked. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, you're welcome. And by the way, speaking of protests, I assume you're going to be out to LA soon for the Free Britney Act.
I haven't caught up with that.
Good Lord,
it's in my peripheral vision. Whatever's going on with Britney, there's a new documentary. Justin Timberlake seems to be in some trouble. That's all I know.
I watched it last night, and I'll just say, I shouldn't say too much about it because I'm going to get in trouble, but the whole thing was disturbing on a number of levels.
Huh. Yeah, I hear that there's a lot of legitimate concerns about it and for her, but
it's actually less to me about her and more about the culture of people around her who have become activists for her. It just is something really deeply creepy and weird about sort of celebrity and how these people view her. It just, I don't know. There's something really uncomfortable about it. But again, that's a whole other
once I watch it, we will discuss that if yes. I deem it important enough, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly going to be entertaining.
I hope you deem it important.
Can you tell me about what you think of my editorial judgment? Generally speaking, the things that I talk about have to impact like a lot of people.
So this is the thing about the Britney Spears thing. Like, it seems to be that she's in a difficult situation that, like,
I would categorize it as human interest. It's a very fascinating story of what's gone on in her life, but it's very unique and it's not something that
we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
All right. I just can't concern myself with a multi-million-dollar pop star, even if she's being held.
Right. That's what I'm saying. But it sounds like you can because you seem to have watched this and taken great interest in it.
No, I haven't. I'm outraged by the amount of attention being paid to it. Like, it really is like, this is what we're focused on. Britney Spears, like, honestly, who gives a shit?
I mean, you say that, but you crowbarred it in at the end here after I asked you about Springsteen.
I wanted to make a joke about it. I also wanted to go on a rant about it. I watched it last night.
Sounds like we know what
so outraged.
One of your first columns at your new Truth and Cons Substack.com is going to be titled "Free Britney, Nothing Else Matters" by Michael Cohen.
I did write about Don McNeil who got fired at the Times.
Oh, that's now that's interesting. That's more, that's more representative of a real cultural situation of, people saying.
I don't like to get into these cancel culture debates, but like that is just, it's ridiculous, beyond ridiculous.
You think it's ridiculous that the New York Times fired the guy?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know the story. I don't know.
He repeated a very offensive word, the N word. You can't say it for obvious reasons. Yeah. He repeated it when asked about it. And he got fired, 44 years on the job. And, part of it is that the Times basically said, when it comes to racist speech, intent doesn't matter. How can intent not matter? How could intent not possibly matter when it comes to speech? But that's what a newspaper, right? If he said it was a slur, I'd say fire his ass. No question about it. But if someone asked him a question about it,
I don't know the story, so I'm not even gonna. I mean, I read a little bit about it, so I don't have an opinion. I thought that
clearly you should read my article about it, and all of you listening should sign up for Truth and Consequences, and you can read it too.
Truthandcons.substack.com. Michael Cohen, thank you.
Thank you, Pete, as always.
All right, there he goes, Michael Cohen. Check it out, truthandcons.substack.com. Links in the show notes. Follow him on Twitter at SpeechBoy71. Always great to have him join me in conversation. And now, my next guest, I'm really excited to introduce to you for the first time. So, the community that we have created here at Stand Up has been just so really the best thing that's happened over the past year for me. And I know many of you have said similar things about how important it has been during this year. And there's so many curious, kind, generous, thoughtful, brilliant, hilarious folks out there listening and contributing and supporting the podcast and joining the happy hour hangouts and hanging out on the Discord platform. And one of these special people is a woman named Catherine, or Kitty. And Kitty is a longtime listener, and I've got to know her. I met her at a show I did this past summer briefly. She came out to a COVID-safe outdoor safe show, and we've spoken just a little bit, and I've gotten to understand her nature and her character, and she sends me real smart, thoughtful emails. And she was one of these people who was sewing masks at the beginning of the pandemic. And obviously these type people who are doing this kind of public service were communicating with each other, were networking, and Kitty made contact with Hillary, who is my guest today. And they got to talking, and their ideas for how they could give back to their communities developed and evolved, and it led to everyday action, which actually Hillary and a friend of hers came up with. And Kitty is now working with them as their secretary, and she's, of course, a supporter and subscriber of this show. So she put me in touch with Hillary Cohen, who is my guest now, to talk about this amazing nonprofit that she started, and more importantly, to talk about why she did it, what within her made her want to do this, and how it has felt that she's actually been successful with it. So thank you so much to Kitty, and go to charity.gofundme.com if you want to support them. And here now is my conversation with the amazing Hillary Cohen. You live in California, you live in Hollywood, you work in the entertainment industry, you're in television. How glamorous.
Oh, it's so glamorous. Actually, I always joke about being an AD in the business, how I'm always there at 4 o'clock in the morning in like a puddle of human piss downtown. It's very glamorous.
What is it? You're an AD on the hit show NCIS LA.
Los Angeles, correct. So my job is really to plan. For most of my career, I've been a second AD, which means I create the call sheet. So I pretty much manage today and plan tomorrow. So I take all the elements that everyone's put together, and I make sure that every person, place, and thing gets to where it needs to go every day and the next day forward. This year, I've been the COVID first AD in charge of all COVID testing. So I kind of took that skill set and moved it towards the COVID world. So I'm in charge of all of our COVID scheduling and testing, and I make sure that our 300 souls stay in our bubble as safe as possible.
Boy, how many hours of sleep do you get?
Not much. As the spike in COVID has gone up, our lab has gotten a lot of tests. So our results roll in from like midnight till 5 a.m. So I kind of have like a nap schedule now, but that's okay.
Oh my gosh. Another point, we can have a conversation about how the entertainment industry, how television and film sets are dealing with COVID, because all I know is what Tom Cruise has told me.
There's a lot of good stuff. Tom's got a good perspective, but I have maybe a little calmer idea.
You call him Tom. Are you guys friendly?
Oh, we're real good friends. We go way back.
All right. So at what point did you arrived at this current nonprofit, this idea that we're going to talk about, through a different effort related to COVID, which was mask making? You're one of these people who noticed that there was a run on masks, a major demand for masks, and became a civilian army of sewing mask makers. Tell me what you did and why you did that.
Sure. Yeah. NCIS LA, we shut down just an episode early due to the virus. And for the first time in my life, I was kind of put with this stop of time. In the entertainment business, it's go, 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 go. And then you have a little bit of time off, and then you go back to work. And that time off is always spent traveling and really unwinding for the little bit that you need to. So it's just kind of, there was just this nonstop, and then COVID hit and I stopped. So I was at the grocery store and I saw all these people without masks on, and I just got to thinking about what could I do in my time off. So I started a group called Call to Crafting. I myself sewed 5,000 face masks, and I think my group sewed over like 15,000.
Wow.
And we mailed them to facilities all over the United States and California. And, during that time, it was an interesting time in our country, right? There was a lot of charged up things happening, and I kind of got to angry sewing and just thinking like, there's no hope. And nothing's going to change, and what can I do to do something? Because running for office, kind of seems a little daunting. And that's kind of where Everyday Action started. I kind of started with this idea of, well, what if every person every day did something for someone else? What would that do? Could that make a change? Could that be bigger than a president that didn't want to, be involved with helping people? And to me, that was the way that I could approach that on the floor.
I love that idea. If you did something every day to help other people. I mean, I myself am too busy, but I think other people should consider it. Is that what you say? No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm totally joking. That's what you think, though. You think, well, let other people do it. Let other people do good things. Are you a person who, in your life, was that kind of like a volunteer? You work with other nonprofits? Were you raised in such a way that inspired you to do something with, because we've already, established that you don't have time. That's the point. So you prioritize helping other people. And where does that come from?
Well, my mom grew up with my mom working in women's health at Planned Parenthood, kind of when it was really dangerous to work there. And she's always someone who has donated her life to service. She currently works for Homeboys, removing tattoos off of gang members at the age of 72. So she's pretty badass.
Wow. Well, that explains a lot. Yeah, that's very cool.
But it really just came in this stop. And I've had a bit of in the past few years, a struggle with where I am in my career and where I want to go. And I just kind of get sick of planning things that don't matter to me. It just feels like at the end of the day, that's not my story. So I've been trying to figure out what that is. And in working in the business for the past 10 plus years, I've seen a lot of food get thrown out. And I came from the independent world where mom and dad's made, tuna sandwiches at craft service, and we ordered McDonald's for dinner. So the shift from that to gourmet food on set, where it comes from, it looks like a wedding banquet with lobster and filet mignon, to then see that get thrown into the trash can next to someone starving was really shocking to me on my first day on set. And it really never stopped bothering me. And I kept asking about this. And I just kept saying, we might get sued because someone will get sick. So it's just easier to throw the food out. And growing up as a kid, that was something that always bothered me when you would ask your parents to do plans and they would say it's too complicated. And as an adult, I never wanted anything to be too complicated because it's just figuring it out. It's just a puzzle. It might be a more complicated puzzle, but that's all it really is, right?
Well, no, not right. I mean, that's an interesting way of looking at it. And I wish I had some of your magic there. And I want to learn maybe some of those life hacks, because you're talking about problem solving, and you saw a problem here in terms of food waste, and you are now solving that literally. So, I mean, this is now we're talking about Everyday Action, your new nonprofit. And I think that it's so great that you are doing this, but I also am talking about it so that people will hear why you are doing it and what motivates you to do something like this. So let's just talk a little bit more about the issue. It's food waste. It's food waste on high budget corporate entertainment shows like the one you work on. Great food. And the other issue, and I think a lot of people might not know the severity of it, is the homelessness issue in the same neighborhoods where your show and many other shows and films are shooting, right?
Yeah, it's like the story I try to picture is a film crew is like a circus. It's, 15 semi trucks. And if you've ever driven down the freeway past a semi truck, it's a big circus. And that comes in at 2:00 in the morning all over Los Angeles. Now, Los Angeles has almost 60,000 people living on the streets in tents. So their homes are the streets. And as an AD, you get there at, the early parts of my career as transpo is arriving. So it's quiet downtown LA. All of these homeless people are in their tents. They're sleeping. And here comes the truck. And they just roll all over their homes. And they push them aside. And they make them move. And they pay them to get off of the street. And there's no care for them whatsoever. What's more heartbreaking is next to that tent is a food buffet that smells like it came from the Ritz-Carlton. It looks like it came from the Ritz-Carlton. There's 3 different kinds of salads you could have, like a fruit salad, a salad with quinoa, a couscous salad. there is a steak, a chicken, a fish. There's 2 different kinds of pasta. There's 3 different kinds of desserts. The food on a film set is insane. And that's fine. I'm not criticizing there being gourmet food on a set. It's just what we do with that waste. Because to me, starvation is just, we just need to reallocate food waste. If every grocery store did this, there would be so many people that weren't starving.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest issues, and I've looked at this a lot of times with a lot of experts who talk about it and study it and sustainability in general, and we don't have a food shortage in the world. We have billions of people in the world. We have a distribution problem. We have economic models that don't distribute anything, much less food, in any kind of equivalent way. And so there is and you've identified this in a microcosm, in a micro community, in a way, and in a specific industry. And you've made a lot of progress. I mean, the quick story is you're now picking up food from 6 different productions, right?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. We started in July with one producer who took a chance on us, and now we pick up food from 6 shows full time, and we have 4 other contracts out in the works with people calling us every day who are interested. And the coolest part is, Sam, who's my business partner, and myself are kind of seen as these, we call ourselves the food ninjas. And, just yesterday I got a call from a producer who was on their set and said, hey, wasn't able to call you. I loaded all the extra food in my car. Can you please just tell me where to take it? And that filled my heart with so much joy, because that's what everyday action is. It's inspiring someone else to do that, to get in their car, to bring the food somewhere, and they just need a little bit of help. So, as an AD, I was the set mom, or I am the set mom, and I take care of all these people. I just want to take care of more people and more people who need more help. And there's another part of our job that are in the business, that are these backgrounds and production assistants, who are the least paid employees of the set. And the pay scale in Hollywood to them is pretty crazy. A production assistant can barely afford to live in LA, let alone work here. So I just had this idea, if we've had all of these lower paid employees who have days off, because a background or a production assistant isn't always staff on a show. They might work 2 or 3 days at their craft and have 2 days off. Well, those 2 days shift throughout the week, so you can't get a part-time job. So this allows them to work any day of the week for a day rate on those days off, and help kind of them who also are forgotten about in Hollywood. So we're trying to kind of have this system that works in itself within Hollywood to just kind of take care of this waste that shouldn't be happening. Los Angeles in any given day could have 100 productions shooting in a 90-mile radius. We just want to pick up all of that food and get it to someone who needs it.
It's such an amazing accomplishment already. There are some obstacles in growing it. Obviously, resources and capital are one. It's a nonprofit. You need money to pay these folks to do this work, and to have the trucks and transport the food and so on, and to have people to organize it. And so that's one issue, obviously, for every nonprofit. Let me just ask you quickly, though, how are you funding this project, and how can, if people are listening, support it?
Sure. So we're all donation-based. Currently, we're on GoFundMe. If you go to our website, youreverydayAction.org, it has all of the information about donating, and we're all just on donations. So the more money we raise, the more food we can help pick up. The goal is to get a food truck down the road. So all of our volunteers will bring the food to the food truck, so our food will always be warm. Currently, we serve it in thermal bags, but we'd like it to be even more delicious for the homeless. We were able to raise, a little bit to get us going, but we certainly month by month barely make it. So the more funds we have, the more food we'll pick up. And we just really want to service every show in LA by this time next year.
Awesome. I also have I know a lot of people live in Southern California, and if they want to get in touch and volunteer and help out, then just email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com, and I'll put you in connection with Hillary. And it's also a great idea, by the way, that you use these folks who are out of work for the day or for a couple of days to do the work. I mean, that's a sustainability solution in a way as well. So it's such an amazing nonprofit. What are the current obstacles to getting more sets you mentioned there's 100 productions at any given day, even during COVID. What are the obstacles with you guys getting involved with more of these sets and them giving you their excess gourmet food?
Currently, there's really just a fear of helping people, which is something I've really started to evaluate. It's like, what is that fear in helping someone else? Because ideally, when you're doing that in person, you're really valuing your life more than someone else. You're saying, I would rather watch you starve than help you because it might hurt me. And that to me is a gross concept and just odd. So, that's kind of what we're met with, is a lot of people are afraid of helping people because they're afraid of what they will do back to them. I don't know if you've ever been to a homeless encampment or interacted with anyone homeless, but they're some of the most generous and kind people I've ever met. There's not one person I've given a meal to that hasn't looked me in the eye and said thank you and touched my life. So for someone to say, we might get sued by helping someone get food, it's just kind of silly. So that's really our biggest obstacle. Sam and I did take that on. We have liability insurance that covers that very worry. So we're hoping that productions will work with us more because we will take on that liability. And that's really where the struggle is people are just afraid of being sued over someone getting food poisoning.
Who are the people that are getting this food?
So mainly we go directly to encampments, which are people living on tents on the streets. We try to service the set or like near the set area that you're shooting. So like NCIS LA, that show that I work on, we're at the lot, like 50% of the time, and then we're on location 50% of the time. And we travel everywhere from Valencia to San Pedro, which is about a 90-mile radius. So we travel with the show and we try to deliver the food where you were shooting to give back to the neighborhood you kind of trampled over. So if you're shooting in San Pedro, we'll try to donate the food in San Pedro. If you're in Valencia, we'll try to go to a shelter.
It's also sustainable. It's also a sustainable way. I mean, just for the record, I mean, if you took the food somewhere else, you'd have to use probably fossil fuels to transport it. I mean, for a further distance, and it's probably just fresher, and you don't have to heat it or refrigerate it, which also takes resources. So that's really smart from a sustainability standpoint, which clearly you care about. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought that was interesting.
No worries. And that's actually kind of the cool part about it now that we have 6 shows going from like an AD logistical standpoint who really likes to plan. We'll have 4 shows in Santa Clarita that all have call times within a half hour of each other, and we can have one volunteer do all 4 of those shows, which is really cool. So that's really how this is going to grow, is the more shows we have, because Sam and myself have this production background, we're going to efficiently plan. So a volunteer only works in Valencia all day. Someone only works in San Pedro all day. And then, it just works in a sustainability level from all aspects.
So my final question is like kind of a deep one about, you already touched on this, and so I want to just ask you about how it makes you feel to be able to do this work, to create this project, this initiative. And you mentioned, that you're at a point in your life and your career, you're like, well, kind of, what am I doing? I think it's so common to be in that spot. You could be making great money, you could have rewarding work, but you get to a point where you say, what else could I do? Or what could I be doing differently? Or is this where I want to spend my life and so on? I mean, it sounds like you were talking about that a little bit, and now you're doing this amazing thing. So you asked the universe, or however you want to put it, a question, and you came up with this solution, this answer, which is actually working and feeding people and making sure this food doesn't go to waste. I mean, I just have to ask you, how does it feel?
It's like the coolest feeling ever. The emotional, like even thinking about it, I really have had this idea for 10 years. I asked one of our actors about it like 5 years ago. I was like, we should get people to do this. And then I realized that I should be the person to do that. And I think that Sam and I are those people. At the end of the day, I think that human beings only have each other to lean on. And if people would shift that energy of hate into focusing on fixing the things they didn't like, I think that we would have a lot less hate in our country. I personally, aside from Everyday Action, we're not politically affiliated to anything, but, I'm very into the BLM movement and all of what's been going on this summer and politically. And, it's just been a hard time to be an American. And I'm really proud of Everyday Action and where it's going to go. And I really think we're going to change the way that our business thinks about food waste. And if I'm that person, that would be awesome. but I just want to motivate more people to do that. So it feels really cool because this is what I want to do and where I want to focus. So I just hope that we're able to, go where we want to go. We want to next year really pick up all the food from every show. And I think Sam and I can do that. We just need to raise the money and get some more volunteers out there on the floor with us. So if you're interested in becoming a food ninja, don't hesitate to reach out.
There you go. Hillary Cohen and Everyday Action. YourEverydayAction.org is the website. And I do want to ask you, because you're an amazing person, and I'm not surprised because you were introduced to me by another amazing person. And I want to ask you about Kitty, who is working with the organization, and how you met her, because she brought you and I together. She connected us. And I think you talked about we only have each other, human beings. And I always think about connections. I think constantly about connections and who knew I can meet and who I can put people in touch with, building this community, and Kitty being a really integral part of it. She's a thoughtful, strong, loving, very cool, smart person. What would you say about Kitty, who's also involved with the organization? She's the secretary. Is that right?
She's the secretary of Everyday Action. She came into my life when I was sewing, and, I funded everything myself, and a lot of people started to donate because it did get very expensive after a while. And Kitty donated all of my thread to me and has really taken care of me through the pandemic, and I actually got engaged in quarantine and had met Kitty online 2 months prior and woke up and was like, I need to tell Kitty. There's something about her that has really, she's kind of like my grandma, I like to say.
Yeah, she's got a quality of caretaking, and as well as wanting to make a difference, a positive way. It's very warm and inspiring. And so I'm so happy. Kitty, thank you very much. Hillary, thank you very much for talking to me about this. I'm inspired. I'm sure folks listening are as well. You can donate, you can get involved, or you can do something similar and hopefully have a similar outcome. Hillary Cohen, thank you very much.
Thank you as well. Have a great day.
All right, there you go. Hillary Cohen, no relation to Michael Cohen, just a bizarre coincidence. But Everyday Action is online at youreverydayaction.org. Again, thank you, Kitty Betham, for suggesting Hillary, and hopefully you're inspired by her action to maybe do something in your community and feel a similar reward. That's what part of what Stand Up has always been about. So that was awesome. And now that's it. Show's over. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope that I will see you tonight at the Hangout. I forgot to say that at the beginning. We hang out every Thursday night at 8 p.m. East. And if you're not a subscriber, sign up now. Go to patreon.com/PDominic or the paid subscription link in the show notes. And then I will talk to you tomorrow. I love you. You're not alone. You can always check us out on the Discord platform if you are a member as well. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take it away, Johnny. John Carroll, everybody.
When the tyrants taunt you and the sirens tease, you better stand up. Stand up. Let the brave meet the challenge. Let the weak flee. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know us right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. Seize the pace change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up, got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up, people got the power. Stand up. Come on, 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 stand up.
And here's a very strange man, the senator from Louisiana named John Kennedy, questioning Neera Tanden, President Joe Biden's appointee for Director of Office of Management and Budget.
To go to another subject. I appreciate your answer. I have to tell you, I'm very disturbed about your personal comments about people. It's not just one or two. I think you deleted about 1,000 tweets. And it wasn't just about Republicans. And I don't mind disagreements in policy. I think that's great. I love the dialectic. But the comments were personal. I mean, you call Senator Sanders everything but an ignorant slut.
That is not true.
And when you said these things, did you mean them?
I wouldn't have said ignorant.
Senator, I have to say, I deeply regret my comments.
I understand that, but when you said them, did you mean them? I understand you've taken them back, but did you mean them?
I'd say the discourse over the last 4 years on all sides has been incredibly polarizing.
I'm asking about yours. Did you mean them?
I really feel badly about them, Senator.
Did you mean them?
I feel badly about them.
Did you mean them when you said them?
I mean, I would say social media is
Did you mean them when you said them?
I feel terribly about them.
Did you mean them when you said them, or were you not telling the truth?
I mean, I feel badly. I look back at them. I said them. I feel badly about them. I deleted tweets over.
Are you saying that because you want to be confirmed?
No, I felt badly about them. And
did you mean them when you said them?
Senator, I must have meant them, but I really regret them.
I want the record to reflect that I did not call Senator Sanders an ignorant slut. Okay?
Thank you. I don't know how I should take that, Senator Kennedy, but Senator Kaine.